I like that hat. That's a pretty cool hat.
Thank you.
You just got that one, huh?
No, I've worn it for like, I don't know, a couple weeks, months.
No, you did not.
Yes, I have.
Okay, whatever.
You just don't pay attention to me.
Well, that's intentional. So, welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. If you're just joining us, you've heard us. And I'm going to halfway apologize because half of the problem is in Colorado right now. So the other half is sitting across from me trying to tell me that I haven't noticed his new hat that he's got on. He's got a Beast Broadhead hat on.
You have one too that you got like 2 weeks ago,
I know,
3 weeks ago. Like he's just yeah.
What? Because
Nothing.
I can't
continue
wear every
on.
hat I got. I mean, you guys know. I mean, look, Chris wears too many hats. That's what happens. He has no hair now. See, so
That was low blow. We're starting real soon.
This is why I should wear hats. You know, the sunburns on the head, it gets to you.
gotcha. No,
At least you can pull it off. He tried to do it, and he looked like a moron.
I did. I shaved every. I actually nared my head.
Ooh.
And because I did not want any more hair at all, I just wanted it to be shiny like Michael Jordan's head, and I was like, I won't have to take care of it or anything, and it did not work. And so anyhow, I'm back to I have hair and I have to cut it, so it irritates me. All right, guys, welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. We're glad you're here. We got two special guests other than Warren and Easton. Easton's the only one here. But I have Chris and Dave are here from the Iowa Blood Trackers Association. Before we get started with them, I want to remind you guys, if you have not got your scents, you need to do so quickly because it is going like crazy. And remember, you guys have a podcast discount, so make sure you get in there and grab that stuff. What else? Apparel. You got some new stuff, new hats and things like that.
There's new shirts too.
New shirts.
Yep.
I can't keep track of all of it. Used to I could, but now it's gotten to the point where I cannot keep track of everything that goes in and out of there. So, and then don't forget to keep submitting. We got lots of them. I think Easton's got a whole bunch of your land, different situations and things like that. Please try to remember, don't send it to us through social media. When you guys send it through social media, I get these long messages, which I love, but then I got to ask you to go do it again on the website where we get it.
And we lose, it gets mixed up. We lose them.
So make sure that if you guys are sending that stuff in, we want to try to help everyone, but we would like for you guys to be able to do it through the website. With that being said, we're going to get rolling here. So welcome, fellas.
Thank
I
you.
feel like we just saw you guys the other day. Yeah, you guys put on that was in conjunction. So last week or this past weekend, Karen and I visited with these guys because you guys had a event, like a seminar, I guess you'd say. But that was in conjunction with the National, I almost said Bow Hunter Association, and it's Blood Tracker Association.
American Blood Trackers Association.
Yep.
So they're a nationwide organization, and so it was an annual event held by the Iowa Bow Hunters Association, but part was
Iowa Blood Trackers Association.
Yeah.
You just said Bow Hunters too.
Hunters,
See?
You jacked him up.
I
You don't
did.
have to-
I admit it. I'm just used to saying that. So
We're referring to
So-
blood trackers, guys. There's associations in America, and there's associations in Iowa, and I'm pretty sure there's only one in Iowa. So, Iowa
is
Blood
indeed.
Tracker Association. Here we go.
but you guys are a fairly new organization, are you not?
We are, yeah. We actually just got the association together this year.
Okay.
Come together and got our nonprofit and really jumping in head first, so to speak, and taking on everything we can to try and make it better for everybody.
Very cool. Now, because we've only had legalized to be able to use dogs in Iowa for, 5 years now?
Yeah.
It wasn't it 2020?
So there was the Iowa Blood Trackers Facebook group,
Yep.
started in 2014, and that pretty much, it was over a 10-year process to get it legal, and really quite the challenge. So we're really fortunate finally to get it passed, and we're now the 40th state in the nation that now allows blood tracking.
Gotcha.
So, yep, just new here since the last 5 years, and new group.
We were like arguing too. We were over here preaching to everyone we could think of because I just cannot I can't fathom why you wouldn't have it legalized. I take that back. I do understand that if someone abuses it, meaning they pretend like they're using a dog or they're running deer, that's not what the law was intended to do. And I loved what the national guys said. I think Ethan was the one that made the statement, or maybe it was Jeff Still that made the statement that the only reason that, or the number one reason to have both the national and the state one was to try to recover more deer, period.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's it. That's the whole goal, is to try to, take the success rate of hunters and increase that by, so anyhow, so that's what we're going to talk about today. I have some questions. Dave has a pretty extensive slideshow, but
we're already in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have questions then. You're
Okay.
just jumping ahead. What is the benefit of the association versus going like you guys said, that Iowa has worked as a group, or everybody was in communication with each other. You guys had a pretty good idea. I think some of you guys really just stepped up as leaders to be able to try to organize a little bit better so that the public knew, hey, there's guys in this area. If you need a tracker, you can look at here and things like that. What's the benefit of moving towards an association, and what's your guys' goal with that?
So I think I spoke to David about it over the weekend. Our biggest thing is trying to, one, get the word out that we are here and available, and two, as trackers with the association, we're able to hold the events like we did over the weekend, bring in new trackers, help everybody get trained up where they need to be. It's really about the network of trackers and trying to make everybody be the best team that they could possibly be. And I tell you, just in the last few months, it's come twofold, it seems, from the last few years, as far as the networking and, hey, this is what's going on with my dog here. What do you think about this? It's definitely going to have its benefits.
Okay.
Well, I think
I like it.
One of the things I guess I would add to that is whether you guys are trying to, because one of my questions I was talking to Jeff about was, you guys as of right now don't have your own. I know there's a through the national, there's a certification that someone can acquire. Yep. But so my point is, what it will do is it will start to weed out the weekend warrior type thing,
Exactly.
that you would
And
know.
the nightmares that people have.
Yes,
with
where
calling
someone
trackers.
calls a dog and they come out there and this dog's never done anything, and people are getting taken advantage of.
Exactly. We want to put the best teams out there possible to
Right.
be able to recover the deer for the hunters.
Right.
So what we also do is offer a map, can be found on Facebook under the Iowa Blood Trackers Facebook group. And so with that map, it lists the profile of that tracker, but also his certifications and qualifications. So it really helps the hunter to pick out a qualified tracker. So the other goals is to work with the bow hunters, reduce the wounding rates. The other part is work with the trackers and increase our recovery rates.
Yep.
And so the other things we do is we actually collect data, some on the shot distance, some on the shot placement, broadhead types, and other things, tools to hopefully help improve our bow hunters and our hunters, and different things like wait times and the information, what they should do and shouldn't do, we'll get later in the podcast, but really to help them to be most successful in recovering that deer.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, being able to have a criteria that says, or like, okay, there's 4 trackers that are close to me, and being able to go in and pick that. They've just started the map. Now, someone can join, and I know this because I talked to them about raised hunting. I would like to see us become a part of that, or me personally, whichever way I do that. But someone can join the Iowa Blood Trackers Association without they don't even have to have a dog. They could just support the
Yep.
what you guys are doing, which I think would be I guess the reason I'm bringing that up, that would be a really good idea. If you're a hunter and you think that you possibly could make a bad shot at some time, or possibly something could end up happening where you might need a dog, $25 a year, I think, is what you guys are charging.
Yeah.
My gosh. I mean, if 100 guys did that, or 1,000 guys did that, that would give you guys the opportunity to really make this blood tracking deal with dogs in Iowa a much better situation for all of us. At $25 a piece, it's just a no-brainer, in my opinion.
So we've encouraged the hunters to show up at the seminars, things they can learn on, for example, to help their woodsmanship skills on thermals, but even, for example, looking at a wound bed or a blood track or
Right.
blood, and to tell the sign of different colors of blood, to looking at the wound bed to determine wait times. And so there's really skills they can help learn to recover a deer without a dog too.
Yeah.
And so just the skills they can learn to showing up at one of these events.
You know, like the whole map thing, calling the closest tracker to you. I can't even count the number of hunters that I help out every year over the phone. You know, ask them all kinds of questions. You know, I like to tell people, hey, I track probably more deer every year than most hunters have to actually track in their lifetime of hunting.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot and we've learned a lot.
Absolutely.
And if I can help you over the phone without even having to bring my dog out, give me a call. I'm going to help as many people out as I can to try to recover their deer, whether it's me bringing a dog out or not.
That's good. I like it.
Yep.
Well, let's dive into some statistics and things that you guys have gotten.
Well, I know Dave has them. I just, like I said, I went through his stuff, and so you I guess me and you will kind of lead these guys, or we'll make it collectively on which way we want to go. Because let's see, 1, 2, 3. I basically broke it into like 5 topics. Okay, so my topics are recovery times. That would be one, talking about where you shoot something and how long you should wait, because that can be somewhat controversial. And no one's going to, and I hope that anyone that's listening understands, we're not telling you this is an absolute. I mean, we're not in your situation. Things change, and things like that. But I wrote down some stuff from Dave's slideshow, plus some stuff that I researched as well. Reading blood, know that nothing's a guarantee. However, generally speaking, and then I listed like dark red, bright pink. What are we looking at? That kind of thing. And then I said, if you're in, and here's a statement that I think I heard it multiple times at the seminar the other day was, if you're in doubt, back out.
Absolutely.
It's just that simple. Or I think that goes one step further in a dog situation. If you're in doubt, don't go over there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're standing in your tree stand or you're sitting in a ground blind and you just made a shot at a deer and you went, oh no, okay, that tells you right there, this is probably not going to go well. And so if that's the case, you got some decisions to make there. And one, Easton and I are like, Easton's done it, I guess you'd call it professionally or whatever, had people call where...
Not professionally.
Yeah,
people called me.
Right.
And we tracked a lot of deer, but that it was by far not professional.
Right. I've never done any that weren't friends or family.
Right.
You know, but my point is no matter who it is, it just seems like that we get a lot of mistakes. You know, we get a lot of wrong answers. We get a lot of miscommunication. And what we're doing, what I know what Easton's doing, what I'm doing, what it sounds like you guys are doing, when you're the handler, you are trying your best to not set your dog up for failure.
Oh yeah.
That is what if you could get that across to, I know you want to find your deer, man, and we want to find your deer as bad as you do. We want our dog to do that.
Yep.
But at the same time, you have to be able to step back and say, here's all the information, so that we can give the dog the best opportunity here. And so anyhow, those were just, and the way I had written that was, be honest about where your shot was. Don't talk yourself into thinking it was better than you thought. And I hope that everyone will understand, if I've made a statement like this, it's because I've done it. Meaning the mistake, I have sat there and said, well, maybe it was way better than it was. Or I got a feeling that I probably didn't make a good shot, but I'm going to go look anyhow, and I jumped him.
Yep.
This is also where, when we've talked about the different stages of a hunter that you can be in, why it's so important to get to the stage. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of experience to where you can control your mind a little bit when you have a big deer coming in or something, and instead of you making a shot, even if it's perfect, and you black out during the shot because you're so hyped up and so amped up that you have no information at a certain point. Like, that should be something that everybody should strive to be able to control themselves through the shot, so you can not only make better shots more consistently, but also have information on the shot when you do inevitably make an error. I think a lot of people just black out and assume that they shot something or hit somewhere, or that's what it looked like, and they don't really remember it clearly.
Yeah, so that's the number one most important is, and we have it on our PowerPoint here, is just to stop, stay put, settle down, and just take a mental note where the deer was standing, where you shot. Second is, where you hit the deer, and then to really note the deer's reaction. Did it mule kick? Did it kind of duck, or like a gut shot? Did it kind of hunch up like in pain? How did it run off? Did it run off full speed or just hunched up like a gut shot?
Was the tail flickering as it walked away? Was the tail tucked? I mean, all these are kind of questions that, we as trackers are going to ask when we get that phone call.
So I'm kind of curious about, I don't know how pointed we want to be on this, but I'm going like that right there is, in my opinion, it could be controversial. It couldn't be controversial, but body language as far as shot placement and things.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious on your guys' perspective, because I think we probably have two different ones, as the hunter's perspective and the tracker's perspective. You guys have the final result and information based on what the hunter said. So your information is only as good as whatever the hunter said. Hopefully it's accurate. How much are you guys seeing that? Like, I see a lot of body language as the hunter that I think is pretty consistent with how a deer is acting, or if they're injured or majorly injured. Ones that I don't see tons of consistent reactions to are things like the mule kick. I feel like you see it sometimes, you don't see it sometimes.
That's one that can be deceiving.
That's what, and so if you guys have more information on things like that, because I think a lot of people just automatically think if I see them do something, automatically that's the shot, and now they throw away any other information that they did think that they had that it could have possibly
Tunnel
been.
vision, right there.
Yes. So what is the consistency on some of those things?
So, well, for the mule kick, for instance, we'll just dive right into that. I've seen deer that have been completely missed, that maybe a twig or something snapped where the arrow hit underneath of them, and they still mule kicked. To me, the mule kick is just kind of a natural reaction for that instant fight or flight. Boom, they're going to kick and they're going to roll.
Yep.
I really don't pay attention to when a hunter tells me that they've got a mule kick out of it as soon as they shot, just because for that instance, I've seen it way too many times where it just means absolutely nothing.
Yep.
Now, you get more into your liver and gut, you get that kind of slow walk off, you get the hunch up, walk away with the tail flickering. There's, almost every different shot is going to have a little bit different body language tell from that deer as it goes to take off or walk away.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay.
So it's going to touch on like the wait times. It seems like that is extremely important to know your wait times and really to dive into what you see at the hit site, what you see on the blood trail, the color of the blood. And so, for example, it seems like the liver shots is the most important to know on your wait times. And the other thing is really how variable a liver shot can be. So I've tracked deer that were liver shot, some that are dead within 1 to 4 hours, and it's a low liver. But the other extreme is I've had high liver shots that were still alive at 18 hours.
This is interesting. When were we talking about this last year, that we were trying to go back and see all the different liver shots? There was maybe me and Warren were talking about it.
Warren.
We thought we were crazy because we'd seen some. They're like, oh, that was a low liver shot and was dead very quickly. Mm-hmm. And then we're like, but we know it's a liver shot and it was higher, but what are the odds that it's actually that big of a difference in time, because it took so much longer? So you have numbers to back that.
18 hours, yeah. So it's crazy. That really wasn't, so the listed is typically 6 to 9 hours, but the other part is how it's variable. But it seems to me that's the liver shots are the ones that are most commonly misjudged, and I would say probably where the most deer are lost.
What do you think they're mistaken for? A lung shot or a guts or something?
Basically is tracking too soon.
Okay.
And bumping him out of that bed. For example, bumping him out of the bed at 2 to 4 hours. If they would have just waited, they would have found it dead in that first bed if they would have waited that 6 or 9 hours. And so what typically happens, the problem is once they bump him out of the first bed, there's typically no blood after that first bump. And then the other times is where they can, once they bump them, then typically they're clotted up and there's no blood trail.
Yep.
And the other part is where they bumped and then they go on to, the deer goes on to a neighbor's where they can't track is the other big problem. But typically it's where they bump and then there's no blood trail. but that's especially where the dog comes in for a liver shot. Is typically it's 99% of those deer are going to die for that liver shot, and there's no blood trail. So that's where the dog comes in, and it's kind of a misnomer for blood tracking dogs. And what's kind of funny is some of the members show up with a bloodhound, and the hunter says, "Well, what the heck are you going to do with this thing? There's no blood, and it's a bloodhound."
Yeah.
So the point is they don't need blood to track.
Right.
There's that interdigital gland that most of our trackers train on. Is you track them with hooves, tracking shoes, or ski poles, and typically use blood to practice or start out with, but essentially avoid any using just hooves to train your dog. And so it's just amazing how they can track with that interdigital gland just on the hoof of the deer.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will say too, I know we've got this slide up, and there's a lot of slides and stuff you see all over Facebook, social media, with wait times on deer for different shots. One thing we found here in Iowa is we're pushing those wait times out a lot further than most of those slides that you're actually seeing.
Right.
A lot of guys will call and they'll be worried about the meat. And I think Kenny from Florida hit on it over the weekend. They're down there tracking these deer and it's 90 degrees and they're letting them lay 3 days and the meat's still perfectly fine. It's something I'm not really concerned about as the tracker, as the meat, because I see it all the time where these deer are laying out there for a couple of days. We'll find them and the meat's still fine. But the wait times are absolutely crucial. And that's one of the biggest problems that I found is when someone calls to say, hey, liver gut shot this deer, when can you get here? I may tell you 24 hours, depending on the information that they're giving me over the phone and what time of year it is. Obviously, once you get more into rut, these deer are amped up. They've got that chemical going through their body and they're healing up quicker and they're tougher. I'll push a gut shot deer out 36 hours before I go put a dog on it. And I've seen these deer living well beyond that with a full pass-through gut shot, so contact your tracker. That's the biggest thing. Ask them, get their advice on wait times. And like I said before, if we can help you walk you through it over the phone, we're going to do it.
Well, hang on. I want to. So one of the things I think what you were getting at, Easton, about the liver shot, at least in my experience, I can't. You guys might have statistics that would say otherwise. Typically, liver shots give you quite a bit of blood, and so that what ends up happening is people want to follow it because I got good blood, and it's dark red. They're like, wow, I'm going to find this deer immediately. Juice would be a perfect example. I knew I hit back the way the deer was standing there, and I was like, I'm 90% sure, and that's only because I've shot as many deer as I have that I could even tell someone that, though. The average hunter might not, they just know I hit him in the middle of the body.
Yep.
If you did, you're probably too far back for lungs. But we saw blood squirt out of the hole is the other point that told me liver and not just guts, or not guts at all. And so I had center punched his liver. Now, what we did not know, because we just backed out, we got down, walked over to the arrow because he had run out of sight. I was like, okay, it's covered in blood. We're gonna put Dan on it, but we're gonna wait 3 or 4 hours here. And the only reason that I was only waiting 3 or 4 hours is because I felt like we had really good blood. And I was like, okay, we've got something to go off of. But we went to the house. Warren was furious with me because he was like, we don't need to wait. We can go. Because there was a little bit of snow on the ground, too. And so you could see blood for 10, 15 yards. Yep. And it went up to like 45, 50 degrees. So when we came back, the blood was gone. Not gone, but it was murky brown looking now. Dan had no issue, following it. And the deer was only 150 yards over the hill. But here's the statement that I guess when you talk about losing deer or leaving them lay that long, when you make a bad shot, and maybe I'm just at that place in my hunting life, but I've been there for a long time now. I finally one day decided I would rather recover every animal, even if I can't eat them. So I'd rather err on a side that says I'm going to find this elk or this deer or this antelope or whatever it is that I'm hunting, but I screwed up here. I'm not going to go push it, and then because what I'm talking about is when you know you have a shot that is lethal, meaning it went into the center of the body, and there's probably a 98% chance that this animal's dying. Then why push it and possibly not find it? If it's going to die anyhow, I'd rather find it dead and not be able to eat it than not find it at all and it's still out there dead somewhere.
Yep, absolutely.
So I just push it. That's where I will err on that. I have to say, I don't know that I've ever intentionally waited 24 to 36 hours. That I've never done that. I've never convinced myself that I needed to wait that. Yep. The longest time that I can ever think of that I've had a deer still alive was a deer that I nicked his gut, part of his liver. It was in Illinois, and that deer was alive 18 hours later. But he couldn't get up. I mean, when we finally walked up on him, we did not have a dog at the time. If we'd had a dog, I think we would have gone right to him that next day. But I shot him at like 4:00 in the evening and found him the next day at like 8:00 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, and a lot of that too comes from the experience of doing it as much as we do. A couple of years ago, I tracked for a hunter here in Iowa. Knew he had gut shot the deer. Waited, I think I was at 24 hours before I put the dog on it. The dog was just in that state of, hey, Dad, this thing's still alive. We're chasing a live deer. And I could tell that we were still chasing a live deer. We backed out. Of course, the hunter was, mildly upset that we didn't find a gut shot deer that should have been dead, Right. At 48 hours past his shot, he got a video of the thing making a scrape with its guts hanging out.
Oh, ew.
And that right there, obviously the deer's going to die. Yep. It's just a matter of how long. But that to me is just proof in the pudding, so to speak, absolutely. Of, hey, wait these things out. Because we could have been pushing that deer the whole time at 24 hours. We'll never know for sure. But 4 days later, there it was.
You're the one that is the pain in the butt to talk to on the phone when they call us and tell us that they have a shot of some sorts, and we want to say that we should be waiting a certain amount of time, and you come up with the story of, well, I had this happen, right, and I only waited 18 hours. There's always an answer. There's always random things that will happen too, like where you have much shorter times. Everybody's got a different experience.
Yeah.
But what you guys are really trying to push home here is that the numbers that you guys are putting out here is out of tons and tons of tracks, the experience you guys have had, and the highest way to get a success rate on finding the animal. Regardless of what your grandpa told you or what your father is telling you is the best time to wait or whoever else is teaching you. This is coming from straight facts, tons of tracks, and tons of different experience from a lot of other trackers.
So I would encourage is calling somebody, experience another Spearx bow hunter. Right. Maybe if you don't want to talk to your dad, but to talk to another experienced bow hunter.
He doesn't have a choice. When he comes in the house, I'm going to know what's going on. I know how many arrows he left with. Oh.
So they would come up with that recovery plan and taking the factors like even the weather or like the snow is many people don't know, but the dog can track even up to 3 inches of rain. Sometimes even the moisture is better, even 3 inches of snow. But there's even times where the dog can actually track better, like if there's a frost, even a little longer wait time where that frost melts or the snow melts and there's actually better scenting and better moisture conditions. But again, the importance of coming up with that plan, and part of it is many of us, myself too, we shoot a deer, you're so anxious, I just want to go out there and get it. And the other part is talking it through, settle down, and coming up with a well-informed decision and plan to how to in your wait times too. And so.
Yeah, no, I mean, and don't get me wrong. I mean, we have had almost the exact same scenario that you had. I don't know if you remember that, but that deer that I shot in Montana, and he ran out there, and I wasn't positive I hit the deer.
That's the one we found in the river.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what's going on is he comes in, it's getting late. Warren, I think, was filming that evening, but you were there, weren't you? Or you were there the next morning?
I was just there to help you track.
So I shoot this deer, and I felt good. It was like 14, 15 yards, but we didn't have lighted nocks or anything back then. And the way the light was, I couldn't see my arrow penetrate. I couldn't tell you whether he mule kicked or what.
Right.
But Warren says, "Did you hit him?" And I knew then he couldn't see him very well through the camera. So we go back to watch the footage, and we're like, okay, you hit the deer. But what didn't make sense is we watched the deer run out to another 10 deer and start chasing a doe around. So now I'm second guessing myself. I'm going, but yet I didn't want to walk out in the field where I had shot to look for my arrow to see if I had actually hit the deer, because all the deer would see me. And I was like, okay, so we just left and went back, and I said, I'm going to look at the footage. And when we looked at the footage, I'm like, okay, I hit the deer. I thought for sure I did. What I don't understand is why he was chasing a doe around. That makes no sense, regardless of where I hit him. Well, come to find out, I had hit him just a little bit back, but it was guts. But anyhow, we went back the next morning. It was probably still, we were probably looking, because that was when Montana gets dark early. So it was like 4:30. We were probably 15, 16 hours. And he was laying right smack dab in the middle. We didn't even get to go look for him. We topped the hill, and there's a river there, and he was laying in the river. And, and I was like, well, there we go, But I guess my point is, when we're talking about that reaction, I didn't have anything to go. Everything was telling me you missed.
Right. Yeah.
The way the deer reacted and everything, you just messed this up, and you didn't hit him at all. And then, like I said, I had the situation where I couldn't go look at my arrow at that time. But maybe the best thing that we did was not do anything.
Exactly. Yep.
So the other part I was going to add on there too is the value of the dog to tell you whether you hit the deer or not. We just had some of the training over this last weekend, is how that dog can tell you if that deer was hit or not, but even more so whether that deer is mortally wounded or a healthy deer is. And so is, like, for example, reading your dog, and I know with Dan, like a non-lethal, he'll tell you, if that deer is alive or dead. So that's just the remarkable thing with me, is that a well-trained, experienced dog, within that 100 to 150 yards from the track, that dog can tell you if it's alive or dead, is really the cool, crazy part.
Well,
I would agree with that.
Matt and Kenny were two of the speakers this past weekend, and they talked about different dogs have different reactions and how to read your dog. Mm-hmm. And someone had one that he would just sit down.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wish Dan would do that, like walk up, go, oh, it's still alive, and just sit down. That tells me. But Dan is he's not interested. And so what happens is, and I want hunters to know that, or if you have a tracking dog or a dog that you won't know what he's telling you. It appeared to me that Dan just wasn't interested. And I'm starting to get mad at Dan. I'm like, well, come on, do your job. I can see blood on the ground, and he doesn't want to follow it. It wasn't until we confirmed one or two times that those deer were alive that then I went, okay, he was trying to tell me what was going on. So the next time it happened, I was ready for it. And when he did that, I told the guys, like, I'm pretty sure this deer's still alive. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, my dog is not interested. And I agree with you. I can see blood on the ground, but he is not showing me any interest. Like, he's just wandering around. Yep. And sure enough, deer was alive.
And I've got one dog that will absolutely, she'll just come back to me and sit down and be like, let's go home. Or on to the next one, Dad. Let's roll.
Yeah, a lot of hunters don't understand that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're that confident if you've had a lot of experience with your dog too.
Yeah.
So kind of analogy is with the science behind it, the deer actually put off a different pheromone between a healthy deer and a wounded deer. So they, for example, like wolves on an elk herd, they can actually pick out the sick animal and target on that. So the other analogy is a person with cancer. A dog can detect the pheromones from a person healthy versus a person with cancer, and can detect, some of the dogs detect cancer. And so it's really similar to that, how the dog can tell the difference. And so the other is reading the dog, especially like my dog on a gut shot. He's excited because gut shots and liver shots, he's going to get the deer. The dogs are, and so they're much more excited than just regular a shoulder hit. The dog he'll tell you whether it's if your chances of recovering that deer.
And Dan's the same way. When Dan does that dig, You know, like you trying to hold him back, and he's like, "No, we're going down." Because he never pulls on a leash or anything. But when he knows, that night with Joey, that's what kept me going, because we had a track that ended up being 1.5 miles.
2.1.
Or total.
Yeah.
But I mean, we never left 500 yards, would
No,
you
it was
say?
freaking circles and
But he circled through
zigzags
some CRP and stuff, where you would have had, as a human, we would have had absolutely no possibility of recovering that deer, because what we dealt with no blood, and we're doing that. And Easton, we're talking now. See, and I guess let me ask you guys this, and this is kind of off. It's not off topic for me, but it maybe for the podcast it is. Do you guys like to have a second person, or do you like to, when you're running your dog, to be completely by you and the dog?
It really doesn't bother me or my dogs at all, as long as whoever's with me, be it the hunter and their friends, whoever, as long as they're far enough back that the dog doesn't feel like they're being pressured or pushed forward.
What about you, Dave?
So it doesn't really matter too much as long as they're behind. The biggest issue, and it ties on there a little bit, refers to that hunter, to make sure he doesn't have the blood or scent on his shoes, and really the importance of people not grid searching prior to the track. It takes, I think we had at least 8 to 10 times longer for the dog to try to figure out all those multiple tracks. And so there's times I've actually gone out and started on the track, and the dog is veered off and is headed back to the truck, and then trying to figure out what the heck's going on here. Well, he's actually tracking the guy's shoes
Walking back to the
that
truck.
was walking back to the truck. So many, even some of the trackers even charge more, because it takes, sometimes 3 to 5 times more of their time. Many times they show up, and if it's a fresh, clean track, they can cover that track many times in 20 to 30 minutes, versus an area
2 or
that's
3
been
hours.
grid searched, and it takes over 3 hours to try and sort it out.
And for the hunters, be honest with your tracker. If you and your buddies have been out there walking around looking for this deer all night, tell us.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be able to tell once we put the dog on it by how that dog's acting, and we're going to call you out on it.
I learned that because when I started was with a puppy. I mean, he was barely a year old when he started doing his first ones, and I didn't want to trust him as much as the hunters. I was like, they wouldn't lie about it. I had so many that just flat out didn't say, like, we went and looked for anything or anything. We haven't been out there, things like that. And then you get out there, and now that I've had the experience with doing different ones, you lying turd lickers.
Yeah.
There's freaking, I know you guys walked everywhere, because it took us forever to
So the
to
dog
get
will
through
tattle.
this.
The dog will tattle on those people, and that then upsets the tracker that they've been lied to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, where I was going, though, with Dan particularly, because I've never tracked with anyone else's dog. I've been with Easton, but I like 2 people. And what I'm getting at is I'm with Dan, and Dan and I are focused on the track. The person behind me, I don't want them too far, but not in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing is, if they can give me any confirmation,
Blood along the way.
there was some blood, or there's a broken stick, or there's a track. That just is one of those things that goes, okay, I know what I'm reading from him is solid.
Yep.
And that night is what I guess I was getting at as we were tracking this doe is, I mean, there was a couple times where, like, are we sure here that he is going, because he's just we're right back where we started, and I'm like, dang it, but the way he's acting, I have to trust him, because he was just giving me every sign that this is right, Dad. This is right. Yep. And we just kept going and going, and I thought he was going to give up because of being tired, and he just kept going until finally, when we did give up on him, on her, not that, and I felt bad as a tracker, because we actually had the best sign we could ask for. We get to a cornfield, and I can see blood all over the corn now. I'm like, okay, this deer is done, but I can't. I think it's still alive, so I'm gonna make him come back, and so I pull him off of what I felt like was victory, And we waited a couple more hours, and then we went back. And when we went back this time, we were walking in to go. I was going to start him right where we left off, and I lost him. And Dan's black, and so it was pitch dark, and I'm like, where'd he go? Because I don't put him on his lead until we're ready to go. And so he was just walking beside me, and typically he's right there. And I said something to Easton. I'm like, do you see Dan? And he's like, no, I don't know. Oh, he's right there. Shine the light on him. Well, he's standing on top of the deer. He's like, where are you guys going? You know, here we go. We're done here. So it was pretty cool. But anyhow, I guess my point in all that is trying to make sure that we understand what kind of message we're telling people and how the tracker is going to work and how the dog is going to react to what he's doing, you know. So, but I want to get into you kind of jumped ahead on me, Dave. You went to where my
get pointed on this. We need to solve a problem because these guys are problem solvers, and right now it's tweaking me out the fact that we have gotten nowhere. So, what are we trying to solve? Are we trying to make it easier for hunters to understand what trackers do and how they can get a hold of trackers? Are we trying to get statistics out there as far as what types of shots cause this and cause that? What is the point here? Or are we just trying to be able to just bring awareness? I mean, any of them is okay, but what is the most important? I mean, you're down to you got an hour of
so we got three. So we got three questions there. Then, and we're going to only answer one. So if you jump ahead, I'm stopping you. Okay. So
you can blame him. You can stop him just as much as he does it.
We're going to talk about recovery times. We're going to go in and list them. Okay, so that we all have an idea. And again, these aren't you can't. As much as we want to say 16 hours. It might be 24, it might be 36, or it might be 7 or 8. But generally speaking, this is why you would want to do that. So I think we do that. I think we talk about what blood looks like, the colors, and what we're seeing. And then the last one I think that we look at is that we talked about it a second ago, right after a shot. I think we just clarify, you just made a shot, now what? Because what we're asking for, and then all that culminates into a better chance of finding your deer with or without a dog. But if there's any inclination that you have made a bad shot and you think you might call a dog, here's how you would handle that. I think we use a hunting scenario and we just go right through it. You know, you just made it so.
I can answer that in about 2 seconds. If you're doubting and you think you have to get a dog, do not go look.
Yeah.
Don't touch anything. The most, and you guys may disagree with me here, so please do. The most you're allowed to do is maybe walk to the arrow to get a little bit of clarification on what the arrow looks like for blood and what's right there at the arrow. Not 20 yards down the trail, not 30 yards down the trail, or 100 yards down the trail. Get your arrow, if you really can't handle it, look at the arrow, and go back to the truck. That's it.
Spot on.
No questions. That is what you should do, so you don't screw up anybody else or any of the dogs or anything else, and you're giving yourself the best opportunity too for the dog to find what you're looking for.
I was going to add maybe one other thing to add if we had time is to add some of the data that we discovered too on shot distance and a couple really surprising things we learned.
Hold on, don't go there.
Yeah. Now he is starting to jump. I do want to talk about that.
We want to go there, but not yet. But because Easton has dove off on the. All right, we're talking about the shot. Okay, so I want us all four to give our point. So you just shot a deer. Situation is deer ran off out of sight. You think you made a lethal shot. What are you going to do? What is your next step? You're in the tree. Let's just assume it's a tree stand and it's a bow hunter because that's what's coming up here quickly. It changes a little bit with a gun. Mm-hmm. You know, things could change. But just in this scenario, and I'll give Dave a little bit. It's 17 yards because I know what the distance is he's going to talk about in a minute. So it's a 17-yard shot. You're 12 feet in the tree. Everything felt good. Deer was standing perfectly broadside, and you think you made a lethal shot. You felt like the arrow went in somewhere behind the shoulder. Deer took off, went out of sight. What are you doing next?
I'm going to tell someone to stay right where they're at for at least an hour before you even think about getting out of that tree and climb down and go look for your arrow. Give it a little bit of time, collect your nerves, get yourself together, climb down, look at the arrow where the deer was standing, and see what kind of sign you're getting right there at the shot site. And at that point, that's going to determine what you do next.
Okay.
How that arrow looks, how the sign looks right there.
Smell the arrow,
taste
take pictures,
lick it.
Okay, hold on. I think it's important to note though, because the thing you said in there is a deer ran out of sight.
Yep. And
so it's alluding to there's some form of distance. This deer probably ran a decent ways, But this also, think about your own positions or your own situations where you hunt. Okay, because this could be it ran 30 yards and it's out of sight because it's so thick.
Or it could be 300.
Or it could be you're in the middle of a field and it ran a long freaking ways and it ran out of sight. So this is all relative to what your situation is and where your location is and how you're hunting and what it looks like. So I would say give them an example. I mean, for around here, they probably need to run 70, 80 yards, if not a little bit further, for them to completely go out of sight for probably the average of our stands where they're in the trees and things. So we can assume that they probably went over 100 yards. Is that fair to say?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, so we'll go off of that as the basis. Is we're hunting somewhere, we're in the timber, but we have shot something that ran out of sight, probably around 100 yards where we lost vision of it.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw in, and you guys are each of you are the hunter. So Dave, you get this one. Would you rather the arrow have gone through, or would you rather the arrow still be in the animal?
So pass through, extremely important.
You're setting him up to jump ahead.
No, I just wanted to.
You're literally baiting him.
I'm not.
So some of the blood tracker data too is 35% greater chance of recovery with a pass through, and so the other part is how it with the lungs deflates those lungs, but the other part is especially in a high angle shot you have that drain hole. And some of the other things is the problem where it takes so long to fill up the cavity before you even get a blood trail. So really the importance of a pass-through.
Okay. So, but would that change any of your guys' time you wait? If again, good shot, deer runs out of sight, arrow's still in him, but maybe, and to Easton's point though, I could tell you that, and it could be 25 inches of the arrow sticking out. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're probably not getting out of the tree for 10 hours. Or it's all buried all the way to the fletching, but still in the deer. Okay, I maybe didn't get a pass through, but I've got two holes. I got an entry and an exit hole on the other side. Okay, so there's different ways of looking at that. But in that situation, good shot, deer runs out of sight. Let's just say it's a complete pass through. Chris says he's given it at least an hour. I'm right there. That's exactly what I'm probably doing. I'm just waiting and gonna see what I think. The other one, though, that I feel like if we can help hunters understand this is because, and I remember this from hunting with my wife, and she was brand new and she shot a deer, and it's running off. Like we're talking 7 seconds after the shot, and she starts to talk to me. And I remember not being very nice about it. I'm like, stop. And she's like, she was like mad at me now because I talked to her that way, and I was so focused on this isn't over yet. I'm just sitting there like listening to every little thing, and what am I hearing? Do you hear them cough? Do you hear or do you hear clunk as something tips over? Do you hear a big limb break? Do you hear a fence? Like they're stuck in the fence, or they jump the fence, or go through a creek or into water. There's just that moment after that shot. And when I say that moment, I'm thinking 30 seconds to a minute, where you just aren't doing anything, but you're totally focused on what has happened.
Listening.
Listening, looking.
I was going to say, I always try it like at least a minute. I've got video of In the Blind with Joey doing the same thing. And he learned a valuable lesson with that one because we heard the deer go down where we didn't know where it went. But I would say at least a minute. I mean, that's the whole thing about keeping your cool. You've got to be able to get to the point where you can physically and mentally make a shot, whether it's a 190-inch deer or a doe, and be able to stay calm through the shot, but also say, hold on, I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to freak out right now. I'm still got another minute or so until I can lose my crap and get excited. So and I think that a lot of, because every one of those, there's probably thousands of situations where we could say that one little thing we heard is the reason we figured something out or how it helped us on a trail. Okay, so with this, I think we need to still focus a little bit better. Are we focusing on the hunter?
Yes.
Okay? The hunter's perspective, not the tracker. Okay. So we need to figure out how a hunter, not only wait time is assuming that we have a dang good idea of where we hit and everything. Okay. They probably are going to walk up to their arrow if they're not sure. If they smoke the deer, they probably know that they're pretty confident about it. 9 times out of 10, we're not talking about somebody who smoked a deer. So when they're walking up to an arrow, let's say, and they can even be questionable about the shot. They're not sure, but they need to get an idea. Here's where their first information comes into play if they don't have a video camera or some form of reference to look back on. They can see blood, they can see the arrow, they can see all kinds of different things. So what are we looking for and what's determining it? So we've got multiple different shots, okay? Heart shot, we have a different type of color blood. Lung shot, especially a different kind of blood. We have different shots or different blood for liver and guts. Okay, so that's where we're determining our time frame off of, not just a random, we think it's a good shot. So if we want to actually do it properly, heart shot, how long are we waiting? And how are we determining it's a heart shot? We're very confident it's a heart shot as a hunter.
So let me throw this little monkey wrench in here too.
Okay.
I'm gonna want to know what color hair I got at the shot site.
Okay.
Type of hair, and you can actually have a little key too if you want. You could collect off another deer.
Why is that?
You're going to have your gray hairs up front on the chest for low brisket shots, which is going to produce a mass amount of blood. You're going to have your white hairs coming, if it's high angle, come out the guts, come out the belly. The little bit finer hair coming off more towards the top side of the back. And then, of course, your regular just brown hair coming off, middle body shot.
Okay. That right there is an experienced dog tracker talking.
But Dave has a slide. One of yours, if I remember correctly, the slide that talks about like particularly a heart hair. The hair around the heart is like 2.5 inches long and black tipped. If I remember that correctly, I'll find it here because I was like, I didn't know that. I would never paid that much attention to the hair like that.
So you can actually buy kits online. Hair kits to determine like a key where that deer was hit, or the other simply you could collect it off a deer you harvest yourself, and have a little, this is brisket hair or such. You can.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I've paid attention to the hair before, and like when it's like white or something, it's like okay, that's probably belly somewhere lower. I've never thought like different chunks that there's that definitive of a difference.
So the heart is covered by long, fine hairs that can measure up to 3.5 to 4 inches long. They have fine black tips leading to tan or brown for a 1/2 inch or more, with the rest being gray.
Heck yeah, that is good information.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have a lot of this stuff probably put on the screen for people watching. Just FYI. Okay, so we just added another thing that's good though, because it's gonna give us a heck of a lot more to be able to, if you can find some of that hair, to be more sure about it. Okay, so heart shot, we are seeing.
Well, hold on. Let me, because there is a method to my madness, and we got through what we would do if we thought it was a pretty good shot. We're waiting about an hour. Now let's just say you don't know exactly where something's in the way. You don't have a lighted knock. You can't. You just weren't, or low light conditions. You're not positive of where that arrow hit, but you do feel like you hit the animal. What is your next step?
That's literally what we're doing right now. We're going through what each color blood is, so they can determine on their own where they hit the deer.
We're going to get to the blood in just a second. But how long? I guess my question is: are you still climbing down in an hour, even on a shot that you're not sure of, and going over to investigate the hit site?
If my arrow is right there, I'm walking over to it. That's the only thing that has information, whether it's 30 minutes after or not, especially if the deer ran out of sight. If I'm going to walk 20 yards to where my arrow is, I'm not going to bust a deer.
And I'm going to tell you that 50% of the time at a minimum, probably more like 75% of the time, you can't see your arrow from that stand. You don't know if it's down where exactly it is. You're going to have to get down and go look for it.
I'm not going to go walking down the trail is my point.
Okay. So that's what we're just investigating the hit site. But we're still do you agree, Chris? Are you waiting an hour, you think, before you're probably climbing down, even, especially when you're not sure?
Even if I know I smoked an animal, I'm still going to give it an hour before I climb down. Even if I see that
so
deer.
You don't let yourself go?
Yes, absolutely. So,
I can see that.
Even if I see that deer fall, 200 yards across the field, I'm still going to sit there and wait an hour because I think it'd still be laying there alive and jump up and run off if I get in a hurry and go over there.
You are a controlled man.
Yeah. I can't do that.
I'm looking at that thing laying there. Oh,
the fortunate thing for us is we've hunted with cameras for so long that we'll say, okay, I'm going to wait an hour. 15 minutes later.
We're hauling
forward
across
the camera
field.
time.
but here's what happens. It takes us 45 minutes to get our stuff
Everything
out of the tree. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, we were right on time, you know. But so anyhow, so we got a situation, deer runs off. Now we start to investigate what we're looking for. Blood, hair, that kind of stuff. Okay, you see bright red blood. It's pouring down raining.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But you see bright red blood, and it looks like, you know, there's quite a bit of it. What is your first initial thoughts? And no hair or very little that you can find. What I guess, because I'm trying to think of what you were going to face when you walk over there. These guys had a very good situation the other day. It was obvious they had one that was guts. You know, and how, I guess maybe start with that, because it is, in my opinion, it's one of the easiest shots to confirm. And that's because there's something in the blood. I mean, there might be blood there too, but it's green typically.
You're jumping.
No,
you just gave him a shot.
Okay.
Stick with the blood. What are we doing here?
Okay,
It's
so-
bright red blood.
Okay, so bright red blood, what are we thinking of? What kind of shot do we probably have?
I'm not
thinking-
going with
I'm
if
thinking-
there's nothing in it at all. Like,
No, yeah, there's no guts in it or anything like that.
I'm not very
I'm thinking
bright-
possibly muscle.
Bright red, is there any kind of bubble at all?
No
with that?
bubbles.
That's what I was at, not guts. Bubbles or
Okay,
not.
and then these guys taught me something the other day about bubbles, and I'm going
There's
to,
two different kinds.
yeah, I mean, which confirmed what because I'm like, man, I've seen blood so many times that had bubbles in it, and it was not a lung.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're saying is it can come from, you can get bubbles in the blood. However, the little fine bubbles, like lots of little ones in there, that is more like that is oxygenated blood. That is coming from the lungs of a deer.
Yep.
And there will still be some of that pink in that blood, even if it's dark red with the pink in it. They did a really good job, I thought, they had a blood demonstration of that. It wasn't pink like you would think, pink and frothy. It was red, but then in it there was a pink stripe, which confirmed that.
That's many things where I've seen hunters kind of err on, is they see bubbles in the blood and they're thinking, oh, this is great, it's lung blood. But many times is how, the muscle blood can be lung oxygenated too.
Yeah.
So it's often confused.
Yep. Okay.
I don't feel confident with like bright red blood with nothing else in it. But I'm trying to think like, I guess, how do you describe it? Because some of the only times I've seen it is not a lethal shot, but it's not like just like muscle blood is typically darker red, and we see. But I also think like heavy last year was really bright red, and that was in the shoulder, and no penetration. I mean, like, so is that common that you guys see that when it's
So
like flesh almost more so than it is
yes,
muscle?
it is more common. Shoulder shots, bright red blood, and a lot of it. However, here's a wrench, and I'm sure you
There's
caught
always
this.
a wrench.
You caught this. You caught this last weekend too. There is actually a section in the liver that will throw out a bright red blood as well. And it's not always going to be a dark red, deep colored blood from a liver shot. There's a chunk of liver that will actually throw out the bright red blood as well.
Like processing the blood or something. Still
I forget
in
what that area was called.
It's something
There's a-
highly vascular.
Yeah.
A certain small spot.
Always gotta make it confusing. Okay, so there's two options. But outside of that, I mean, if you know you're not hitting mid body or whatever, are we in agreement that it's probably some form of flesh or shoulder wound that's not great if it's just bright red.
And one of the worst ones that I see, and this is for those guys out there hunting, just so that you have it, is the one that gives you, in my opinion, the heaviest amount of the color, the dark to bright red blood, is the armpit shot. You put an arrow through an armpit, and that deer will bleed like a stuck hog. However, he is not even going to check up. He ain't even. I mean, they're living and they're doing just fine.
Yep.
But boy, you will when you walk. And the confusing part is, depending on the angle of the deer, you see it go behind the shoulder. So you're thinking
Looks
money.
good, yeah.
The problem is you never went into the chest cavity. You just went through that underneath there. But boy, it's vascular in there. And
Just a ton of blood, but then it fades out
Fades out.
at 200 yards, and then you're saying, oh, shit.
yeah, 100%. So the other thing that I did on this though, Easton, so I had heart, I had possible. So if you see lung blood, I mean, we're all in agreement that it's a brighter pinkish colored, and it's almost like guts. It's pretty obvious when you see it. It's
not
like,
similar to guts, so nobody gets confused.
yeah, not similar
but
to guts. I'm
obvious
just saying
in how you can
yes.
tell.
But legs can be tough, or like legs and shoulders, what I'm talking about, or the armpit. Head and neck can confuse you or confuse me. And I don't know how many people have shot one with a bow in the head. I know some gun hunters that do it intentionally. But I shot a antelope one time in the head. And this is horrible to admit, but I did it.
On accident or on purpose?
No, on accident. 100% stovepipe.
Okay, well, the way you presented that was like, I tried it one time to see what would happen.
Not at all. It was a major thunderstorm. He stepped out. He's 35 yards. I thought I could make the shot. Arrow between him, like freaking out because he knew I was there, and turned to run. And when he ran off, I thought I hit him in the neck. And I thought, oh, he's going down because he's running off with my arrow sticking out of both sides of his neck evenly. So envision an antelope running down. And then he stops and he turns around. And I realize I'm not in his neck. I'm right through his ears, basically.
Oh, wow.
I mean, through the black patch on one side and out the ear on the other side. 13 days later, I finally got another arrow in him. But he was living. I mean, and this was horrible. What I learned about blood, though, because he went and he bedded down, I got another 20-yard shot at him, and I missed him completely. That's how hard the wind, now it's like a torrential thunderstorm. This is going on. I used it to get close to him because I was like, I feel horrible. I don't know what's going to happen to him. So I snuck up to 20 yards. I'm like, I can't miss this time. And the wind blew, and I mean, I missed him by 8 or 10 inches on the second shot. And he was laying there. But my point is, the blood that was in his bed was a coagulated, red, watery kind of, like, it was nasty. You know, it was really odd. I've seen that a few times now, that where people have hit up around the head and neck area, high neck area. I don't want to confuse, I hate to say neck because I don't want to confuse the neck, the jugular shot, deep red. I mean, deep red and lots of it. And you can, I think the one thing that maybe we need to talk about is how that blood, what we see or how it's, I find, I think I get as much from that as I do color. Meaning when I can see droplets and I know the deer was walking pretty quickly here, then that tells me he can't stop the bleed. It's running. Or is it a puddle of it, then nothing, and then a puddle, that I'm only getting blood where he's standing still, you know? Or am I getting blood that's like out here on the sides? Well, some force is pushing that blood out there.
And which way is the drop splattered, or is it just,
Correct.
Plop? Yeah, there's a lot to that.
So those are different things that I guess that I'm looking at when we get to that kind of blood, or when we're looking for that. But what I did was I divided it in, because I think most people, especially new hunters, will not know. They should know where the heart and lungs are. They should know where the vitals are, but they may not know exactly where the liver is located to be able to say, I think I might hit him in the liver. They're going to describe it as, I hit him low and forward, high and back. I hit him high. I hit him, right above the shoulder, but high. That's going to be the terminology that most people are going to use. They're not going to say, I shot him in what I think is the liver, or I was in the intestines, or it's not going to happen. So with that being said, though, we got blood now. We shot a deer. It ran off. We don't think we have a good shot. We got some dark red blood that we didn't follow. We said we're going to hold off. How long before you would call a dog?
So is it dark red or is it bright red?
Dark red.
We are dark red. Okay.
Well, this comes to experience too. I mean, this is like, if you're new, you could have a perfect shot. It's like your second deer you've ever shot or something, and we're not all telling you got to call a dog right away. But if you are doubting, if you have any inclination that it could be a bad shot, that's when we're kind of talking about here. Not like, hey man, I think you just smoked him in the heart, and you're gonna wait, call dog. So I do think it's gonna take some experience to understand how bad of a situation you may be in, depending on where you think you hit. But
So the other part is so many variables that makes it really tough. So the other part is and that's a big question from the hunters is when. So probably the main factor is when it comes where you're actually tracking and follow the blood trail to where it becomes to more of a search rather than a track. Once you get, and so that's where you think you need to start searching. That's probably the time you should stop, back out, reevaluate, and consider about particularly the dog.
That's a good rule of thumb.
I think that's an excellent statement to understand. If you get to the point where you're no longer following blood and that you're getting ready to start grid searching, looking for a body, if you really want to truly have a good chance of still recovering that animal, you probably should back out and call a handler then.
Yep.
Because you do diminish your chances of recovering that deer if you start grid searching, just because it's so much more difficult for the dog too. And then particularly sometimes once you run out of blood and you have to start searching, there's a good chance that deer isn't hit as well as you thought it was. And then you have the chance of then bumping that deer, goes onto a property where you can't track or have permission for.
Yep. That is I think that you have anything to add to that?
No, that's pretty spot on. The only thing I would add to that is if you are at the point where you're backing out because you believe you need to call a handler, try to back out the exact same path that you went in on.
Yep.
Yeah.
What about, so like if you're following the trail, how would you tell them to get back to their truck? Like if they're following the trail, obviously, if you can, walk right back on the same trail, right back to the arrow in the stand and everything.
Mark it with your phone, GPS or flagging or somewhere so you can mark.
Know where your last blood was.
Yep.
The greatest thing since toilet paper, because that's what everyone used.
Right.
You did use to mark, or then was flagging, but OnX.
Yeah.
If you turn your OnX, but when you're in your tree and you're getting ready to go look for your deer before you even get out, hit tracker.
Yep.
And now just turn it on, because what will happen is you'll get engrossed in what you're doing. You'll forget. And if you turn it on now and then follow everything, now you can backtrack. You can show the tracker what you did,
Yep.
And what you saw and what you found, or if you found nothing, I think that's like one of the hugest tools.
And there's been several times by looking at an OnX that somebody would show me the track where they've actually already walked and followed blood. You look at the terrain and, sometimes it's pretty easy to tell exactly where that deer is going and how they're acting by what they've already done. So many times we see these giant deer just J-hook back around right where they were coming from in the first place. And you can see it on the hunter's track where they have it mapped out for you where they went. You can kind of see that slow, gradual curve kind of start coming back, and then they lose blood. And it's like, we could start over here and just kind of wind search this way, or we can go ahead and follow this track because your deer's going to be over here, and there it is.
Yeah. That's crazy
cool.
how some of them do that.
That's really good. All right. So then the one that Dave has been dying to tell us is wait times. I think if we can get that in here, then we will have covered the main points about finding your deer. And so let's talk about, and I know you guys had some statistical data behind. So I want to start with the worst one, and that, in my opinion, is a gut shot. What is it?
We kind of already did that one.
Yeah, but what is the standard that Iowa is, or that the Iowa blood trackers would tell someone you got shot a deer, you found the arrow and it stinks and it's green?
Oh, is it green or is it?
Well, now you're going to switch me into the intestine.
I am
the wrench,
too.
my friend.
I'm good at throwing wrenches.
So the other variable too is there's parts of the intestine or guts. There's parts that's highly vascular, and there's places they're dead within 2 hours, too. So it's
Right.
They're really quite the wait time, and so again,
you can see blood with gut shot.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
100%.
Okay, so it's a gut shot that smells, but it's not all green. Not all. It's just it's got that fatty, nasty stuff on the arrows. How long is the standard?
Early season or late season?
Oh my Lord!
It matters. It matters.
Good point with the bacteria.
Let's do early season because I think the majority of for archery here, I think there's a lot more obviously killed in early season versus late season.
Okay.
So
early season, solid gut shot that I know is going to be a solid gut shot. I'm going to say probably 16, 18 hours.
okay.
Okay. because of the warmer temperatures, the bacteria that's going to be spreading a whole lot faster. That deer's going to die a little bit quicker early season, especially before they start getting amped up for rut.
Okay. What about, I guess, so when you're talking late season, though, are you talking like in the rut, or are you talking like
I'm talking end of
October,
last couple weeks of October.
Okay, so that with that, your late season is peak of the rut, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so now same thing, early season, and there is green all over the arrow, and it's whatever. So there's some blood there too. Now, what is the?
I'm probably still going to wait about the same time, maybe a little bit further out. I may wait 24 hours on something that's a little further back.
What are you indicating that with when you get that green stuff on the arrow?
So that's going to be more of your intestines is what you're going to start seeing. You may even see some puddles of nasty stuff laying on the ground from it.
And so slower, an intestine versus a guts. Yes, there's a difference, but quite a bit longer with an intestines versus guts.
Yes.
A lot long. So
Yes.
that was one thing that Kenny and Matt covered this weekend extensively, and that the intestinal shots, I want to say he was like 72 hours. That was the one I was telling you that he talked about.
Yeah.
He jumped the deer.
Yeah.
And he was waiting 24 hours in between, and it was 3 days.
Yep.
And that was an intestinal shot.
Yeah,
and
Dan had a track like that, and then he had a track like that. And I didn't until Dad came home last weekend. I didn't realize the difference between an intestine and a gut shot. I just assumed that both of them were gut shots. So I was like,
the thing about the intestinal shot too is it can be harder and take longer for the dog to actually pick up on that pheromone, knowing that deer is injured, than if it was a straight gut shot, because that deer's when you shoot through the paunch back there, and you get it in the intestines, the deer's going to walk off. However, it's really not going to be feeling a whole lot the same as if it went right through the guts. So as it walks off, it's going to take a little bit longer for it to kind of start hurting and be like, oh, this ain't right. And that's, it's going to take that amount of time for that dog to really pick it up solid. Hey, here's the line. Let's go.
that makes sense. Okay, so we're ways out on like dang near a whole day. Do you have different opinions, or are we going off of the same information you guys have compiled here?
Yep.
Okay.
So the other part is just how variable it can be. And
Yeah, for sure. What was the next one you had?
I forgot now.
Well, you could do if you just work back up the body.
Okay, so
Liver.
Liver. Yeah, well, Dave covered liver, I think, pretty good. We talked about that at the very beginning, but we can summarize it, and because liver is going to give you good blood, that's the one to me that everyone makes the mistake on. They just go because it's easy to follow.
I think you're going to see different amount of blood though, high or low, aren't you? Like if it's low, I feel like it's dumping blood. And if it's a higher one, I don't feel as though you see just the astronomical amounts of blood like you would.
I would agree with that statement. The higher it is, the less blood you're going to get from it. But also keep in mind too, I mean, I can't remember what the exact amount that what Kenny was talking about. 80, is it 80, not liters, it's 80 milliliters maybe is what it was that an average deer has inside their body.
Oh, milliliters is way not
No,
enough.
I
I didn't know what you were referring to.
80 ounces. I think that's what it was, roughly 80 ounces. And what they were saying was that you could have 4 ounces, he could take 4 ounces of blood and drop it every single step and end up covering like a quarter of a mile and still have blood left what looks like it could be a lot of blood may not be. But the other side of that, though, too, is remember, whatever you're seeing outside, there probably is that much inside the animal as well. You're not getting all of
coming
it.
out.
So there's just a lot of stuff to understand. But the big one, I think, circling that back to the dog specifically, just keep in mind that dog is not following that blood. That dog is following a specific deer, and that's the deer that you're telling them when the trainer or handler puts them on that deer. This is the deer we're looking for, and that's what that dog's going off of. So when they run out of blood, it's okay. I mean, they're not looking for that. One of the things that I remember when we first got Dan was the trainer, when I was talking with him and he was explaining, he says the hardest thing to teach was like a food plot, and because he would start Dan on, or start any dog on a deer, and then intentionally take him into more deer, and seeing if that dog could follow that deer through all the other deer. And once they get to that, then he knows, okay, this dog's got a solid grasp of, once I find this one, that's the one I'm looking for.
And that's how I lay my training lines. I actually go into some public campgrounds and where it's just deer everywhere. And that's my favorite place to lay lines because it just reassures me that I know my dog is following the line they're supposed to.
Gotcha.
Okay, so intestine, and we're referring to earlier in October. So intestine and guts were 18 plus hours, right? Waiting time, typically. Liver, what's the time on it though? Because I don't remember what we had said earlier.
So they often say 6 to 9.
Yeah, I was going to say 6
so
to 8 is what I thought it said.
And then, again, it's the importance to know your shot placement. Was it high or low? And go according to there. So, again, I talked about up to 18. So
if you're unsure, you're going to obviously take the longer wait. If you don't know what.
Again,
high or low.
and that was a statement that these guys made this weekend. So if you have what you think is lung blood, but there's a little bit of green there, and there's all these different factors, the one that you're going to go off of is the shittiest one.
Yeah. Whatever the worst case scenario is.
Yeah, you don't go, well, there's lung blood there, so we can just go. You want to take the blood that is the worst situation is the one that you're going to err on that side of.
Yeah. To tie into that too is, for example, a single lung. You got frothy blood, and you said, "Well, I got lung blood," and this is a dead deer. But it's amazing how many of those single lung shots live and survive, and how long they can go. So at first, to your point there, is you say, "Well, I got lung blood. I can go there in just a couple of hours." But then if it's single lung and liver, then you should, to your point, wait for the worst
I'll
case.
be the first to admit the single lung shot took me the longest to convince myself that it was real, that they could actually live.
Yep.
It wasn't until our buddy Mike sent that video,
He's the one that sent the one with the blown up.
So he sent me a conglomeration of photos. I want to say it's like 8 or 10 photos, and in it he says, "I wanted to send this to you because I shot this doe last year," and I'm like, what the heck? He found that. Well, anyhow, I look at the photo, and it's a brand new killed deer. He says, I shot this doe last year out of the same stand. Hit her right behind the shoulder, went in. We couldn't figure out why I couldn't find her because he said everything looked right. But anyhow, he never did find the deer. The next year comes around, he shoots a doe out of that stand. As they're gutting it, as they're quartering it, they have it hanging there, he looks up in the deer, and there is his arrow. There is a piece of his shaft and so one lung is completely collapsed. There's about 6 or 7 inches of that arrow. It had deflected off of a rib and gone up and lodged into the spine. So it's still in there. It's grown in there, but there is no lung on that side. And that deer was still alive. And he only, like I said, the fact that he ended up shooting it out of the same stand and the same guy shoots it, otherwise he would have never figured this out.
Yeah.
And that confirmed to me, I'm like, holy cow, this deer just flat survived.
Yep.
And then we had, I don't know if you recall the one
that was the deer was blown up.
Blown
like the
up.
Michelin Man.
Yeah, this guy had video. You watch the arrow go in, you would have been like, okay, I'll wait an hour, but I'm going over and pick my deer up. And the next picture he has, the deer is.
He literally looked like the Michelin Man of a deer.
He looks like it's
That's
like
crazy.
swelled up. And so the only thing we could figure is that he had punctured the lung, but it had sealed on the outside somehow.
Oh.
And that air is coming out of that and inflating the deer.
Yeah.
And they ended up killing him.
Yeah, they shot him later on, and like months later, it was like 2 or 3 seasons later that it was,
Wow.
So there's the rarities, that can throw a bigger wrench. All right, Dave, I know you had 2 slides. Did we cover the distances, though, as thoroughly as?
So one thing,
or
talk about recovery rates
length of time,
and the distances. And something that I was really quite surprised with our research is the distance that deer were shot
and how far they went.
And how far they went, but then how many deer were actually non-recovered or recovered. So the part I really assumed is the majority of the deer that were wounded and not recovered, I expected were long distance shots, is what I really kind of expected. And it's kind of some things we've heard is, and it's kind of a ding for blood tracking and such as well, stick an arrow in it, then call a dog. And one one thing is really not seeing that people that are unethical and taking those shots are unethical anyway. And many times they wouldn't even call a dog anyway. It's simpler to grid search or wait for scavengers and such. So to the point there is people that are unethical do unethical things, whether they got a dog or not. But back to the distance part, we found that the average shot distance for Iowa bow hunters was 22 yards. That seems pretty legit.
Across the board, just
Yep.
Okay.
But what I expected is that the deer that were shot and wounded were actually longer ranges. So the surprising part, I found that the deer shot and majority non-recovered were actually short range, 18 yards and shorter. And I think, well, what is up with that? Why is there high rate of deer not recovered at short range? And in some ways, it comes back to my own experience in deer I've wounded. So part of it is just that steep angle. It just such a poor shot angle. You got the chance of just hitting one lung. But most of the issues I see is what's the first pin for an archery hunter is typically 20 yards.
Yep.
So what happens at a deer at 15 or 18? There's typically, in my experience, you still put that 20-yard pin on them.
Right where they want it.
So the other part is people practicing and shooting from the ground, and not the air of not practicing from
an elevated
From
position.
elevated. So the point is practice is how you hunt. Practice. So if you're shooting from elevated, certainly practice from an elevated.
Do you think that some of that could be, because part of it's got to be that there's so many more shots. If the vast majority of shots are under 20 yards or 22 yards and under, you have a higher chance of people missing because there's more.
When they're
That me and Dad were talking about that. And
closer can be. So the other part is really trying to get across to the bow hunters on what they can do. And one of the problems that I see is people were changing their shooting form at close range. So what you should do is bend at the waist, but was finding out nearly 40% of the bow hunters were actually dropping their elbow and changing their shooting form in the elevated stand. So
Just lowering the bow.
so they would just drop their elbow, so then your shooting form changes and your point of impact. So it was about 40% of the bow hunters were actually shooting high because they were changing. So that's one thing I was really trying to get across. One of the most important things is people not to change their shooting form from an elevated stand.
yeah.
And so the other part is that arrow is at a steep angle. Typically, it's about 60% of the shots were high. It ends up hitting the off lung and lodging in the off shoulder, and then there's typically a poor blood trail as well. So it made sense. That's myself and other buddies too. It's been the close range shots have been more problematic than the long range.
Well, and,
Yep.
I think that
Yep.
hopefully people will have their own way, or maybe they'll listen to the one that I'll give you two things there. One, the bottom third, split the deer into thirds, and you want your arrow to impact that lower third. Now, if it's a really steep angle, you have to be in that middle in order to come out. And that would be my other one, is always envision where your arrow is going to come out more than where you're going to impact. If you're aiming at where you want your arrow to come out, don't worry about where it goes in. That's where it needs to go. That's where you want it to come out. You're looking for that off leg side, and where do I, because I've had to shoot some deer, all the way back to the last rib to come out where I wanted, and it was perfect. It didn't, even to this day, you can go watch the deer I shot in Canada, and you cringe when you see the shot. He didn't go 30 yards, and in my mind at that time, and I hit exactly where I had envisioned that I needed to come out. But looking at it on video, you go, wow, that's way back. But he was angled pretty hard away.
Is there numbers on the height of stands at that all?
So
Or
that's not really
general.
really.
Your guys'
documented
information is
too
really
much.
good. I was just curious if that's.
It's the height really isn't recorded. So the other part is sometimes too, because of the deer oftentimes duck,
Yep.
especially alert deer, is many times is to err on aiming low. And so that's what I've kind of practiced a little bit too, is typically aim somewhat low. If you're going to miss, many times it's more lower and the deer's going to survive. But if you hit high, then many times it's single lung and not recoverable too.
Yep. Okay. So what's you got more there then?
So the other thing is like arrow weights, and there's a whole nother one on broadhead types.
Oh boy, that's a whole different podcast.
That's a rabbit hole right there.
So the other part I really like to get across is really the importance of having your bow tuned, but also your arrows tuned. And so, and especially even a paper tune, make sure that arrow is flying straight.
Yep.
And so sometimes I've even see where that arrow isn't flying straight. People will have what they'll do as well. They'll actually, a Band-Aid is they'll screw on a mechanical, and then the mechanical's then hitting the same. But the problem is the arrow's not flying straight, and when the arrow's not hitting perfectly, it loses penetration, it loses power, just because that arrow isn't hitting square. And so that's the importance, is really having that arrow, the sharp broadheads, that arrow flying perfectly straight, then you're going to have much better penetration.
Is that a common thought on guys that think that they can just put a mechanical broadhead on?
So
and
like talk to...
yeah,
you're kidding me.
When their
Yeah.
broadhead doesn't
Yeah.
fly right, they just put a mechanical on to solve it.
Yep.
Okay, let's be clear here. If you're shooting fixed blades, we've had this argument on here many times about mechanical and fixed blades. If you're shooting fixed blades, 90% of them need to be tuned to your bow, so you better have some capability of, if you're shooting the right spine, your paper tune your bow, the things are tuned properly. If you can't get it to work properly, putting something else on there isn't going to fix the issue. It's just going to make the issue worse. So you need to take it to a bow shop. That really irritates me. The guys really think
So
they
talk
can
to
just
guys
put
like-
something on a freaking arrow and that's just going to magically fix it. I just had this issue with Caden yesterday
Yeah, I
too,
know.
the spine issue. He couldn't figure out why his bow isn't shooting bullet holes. And I said, what are you doing? And his spine is way weak on it. So we put a different arrow on there, shot a bullet hole. So if you have questions, don't be arrogant. Ask us, ask somebody who is reliable, not just a friend who tells you what they think the right thing to do is, and get information, because what they're trying to do here is make sure that there's not more wounded deer. And all this comes down to be able to have the best possibility of making the right shot and the proper penetration and everything. That is wild to me. They just think that you put something else on an arrow and that's going to fix it.
So there's things you could do with the paper tune yourself, but I
Yep.
would highly recommend it taken to a bow shop. So that's where I've gotten a number of this information too, is the guys that tune it, and seeing those people trying the easy fix and screwing a mechanical on there. But so even make sure your bow shops too, some of the particular bow shops, if they're not well experienced, they'll here, slap a mechanical on there and solve your problem. But
Yeah. If you ever have had a bow shop tell you that, go to a different bow shop and tell everybody in your area that never go get your bow tuned at that bow shop. Ever again. Okay.
I think we struck a
Good.
nerve with these things.
Yeah.
I
Clearly.
can't believe that people are dumb enough
Clearly.
to do that. That is wild to me. But continue on. Sorry.
I think we
so
got-
the
I
other
think
thing
we
is
answered
like,
my
for example,
questions.
arrow weights. There's a whole different debate on arrow
Yeah.
weights. And so I like the Ashby Foundation method is go with something that has the best trajectory that suits you for the, so there's, I didn't explain that very well, but the Ashby Foundation has a very good method there too on
You're going to
figuring
get
out-
me going again.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that one, so that must be the heavy arrow theory.
Majorly.
Not necessarily. It's kind of like a balance. Goal is for every bow hunter should achieve the most penetration possible with intent of a full pass through.
I think bare
And
minimum, whether
the
you
heaviest-
agree with it, heavy arrows or light arrows, whatever you are doing should be, and you guys can disagree here, but what you're confident with, what you know that you can hit the right
Confident.
spot with in different situations, whether a deer comes in at 20 yards, 30 yards, 35 yards, whatever your effective range is, what you are confident with, more so than what I tell you should do, David tells you should do, Dave tells you should do, or Ashby tells you should do. What you are confident with is going to be what you are going to be the most effective with, no matter what the
Exactly,
situation
yeah.
is.
Confidence is king when it comes to a bow. And the best description I can give is if you ever played baseball or softball, if you're female or male, and you got to the plate one day and the ball looks like the size of a basketball coming in. And that day you're like 4 for 4. You're just crushing the ball. And then you get there another day and things aren't going quite right, and it looks like a freaking ping pong ball coming in at 150 miles an hour, and you ain't touching it. And it's confidence. Yeah. So, and that's the difference of what that, because the ball's the same size. It never changes. It's not a ping pong ball and it's not a basketball. It's that same baseball or softball. And so you just have to figure out where you are and how you get there. Well, I know we got to get going here because Dave's got to be somewhere else. So, but the last thing that I definitely wanted to make sure is I had a statement here that, because I heard this weekend at this class, dogs are not perfect. They can miss a deer. But what happens is I think they get the short end of the stick when we've done all kinds of things wrong and we've led the dog the wrong way. But there can still be have a perfect scenario, bring a dog in, and they still may not be able to figure it out. They can have a bad day too. But if you got a good dog handler, you use someone like the Iowa Blood Trackers to vet your handler, to be able to have some backing and reviews or whatever, however you guys, that's something that I would love to talk with you guys more about later on like being able to do something where you could have, a tracker that has 10 last review, didn't find the deer, but boy, he treated me well, or found the deer and it was a 2-mile track or whatever. That will give people the confidence on who they should call.
Right.
And then like you said, Chris, you guys answer the phone if someone's got questions about somebody and that kind of thing too. So
yep, absolutely.
But was there anything else that you guys wanted to make sure that you got in here? Because I just want to end on my side with how much I appreciate what you guys are doing, because I think Easton he hit it in the first minute there, saying you guys have just taken what all of us been working for and hoping for to recover more deer. You've taken it personally and turned it into an organization. And my hat's off, because without a doubt, if you start getting into tracking deer, you're going to give up some of your hunting time.
All of it. You're going to give it up all.
I promise
all of it.
Yep. I get maybe 3 days a year that I get to go see it, if that.
You're a better man than I am.
I've been bow hunting a long time, and my passion now is just helping other people find theirs.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But there is something you can't explain to someone who doesn't have a dog what it feels like when that dog finds that deer.
Oh, you as the handler get the emotion just the same as the hunter does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So nationwide too, it's only about a 30% recovery rate for a dog per deer. So it is actually fairly low. Many factors that tie into that too is typically when a dog is called. Those are most difficult tracks. There's no blood, but many times they're like single lung where those deer survive. There's problems with, for example, landowner permission. In Iowa, that's required, a leash and landowner permission. So it is fairly low, actually percentage rate, 30 to 35% for nationwide recoveries.
Yeah, the dog's already behind the curve when he's not starting on a fair, even play. One thing that I should mention, because I didn't know the law that specifically, and if you guys want it, and just in case, if you're thinking of calling a dog or you are a dog handler, make sure that you understand that in Iowa, yes, you can track a deer onto a landowner's without permission. You can follow blood without a weapon and without anyone else going with you. It's got to be just the hunter, and he's the only one that's allowed to cross the fence. That means you cannot take a dog across the fence without permission. So make sure that you understand that dog. However, I brought this up in the class. There becomes a very weird area here, because Iowa's is legal to pick up a dog on any place that the dog ends up, as long as he was turned out on a place where you had permission. So technically, someone could be on your property and they're looking for their dog.
You're creating a loophole that we do not need to be advocating
I'm just
for.
saying that I think that the state's going to need to
They're
close
probably going to
that.
fix that.
Yeah,
for them.
because that's not a good situation to find yourself in. I guess my point is, if you have a dog or you're using a dog and the deer goes onto someone else's property, get a hold of the landowner, which you probably should, in my opinion, you should have done that anyhow beforehand and just said, hey, this may not be legal, or illegal. I just want to do the ethical thing. I want to let you know that we would like to go. And in my case, I'm both. I have a dog and I track deer, but at the same time, I'm a landowner. And if someone came and asked me, I would be like, heck yeah, can I come with you?
Yep.
Don't lie to them either. and put them in a situation where they're trespassing and didn't know it.
Yeah, that could be a bad deal.
I think that's happened quite a bit. But continue on, please, Dave.
So the other part is really encourage the hunters to get educated too.
Yep.
There's even, for example, the blood trackers. There's some other that workshop last weekend. The information the hunters can use to look at the wound bed, the thermals. There's things they can educate to be a better hunter and woodsmanship skills. There's books they can look at too, and look at the blood splatter and to learn educated. But the other part is going out and helping other hunters finding their deer. So the other part is we really encourage or want people to find more deer on their own too, and especially knowing the wait times, and so they don't have to call a dog. So 130,000 deer harvested in Iowa, 99.8% of those are recovered without a dog. There's some kind of misinformation on the internet saying, well, stick an arrow in it, call a dog. That's not really the real world scenario out there. It's a fraction of those deer recovered with a dog.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Chris, any closing thoughts?
The biggest thing I can say is, again, reach out to a tracker. If you're questioning your shot at all, just give someone a call. Find us on the Facebook there. We have the Iowa Blood Trackers Association, both the public and the private group pages, where you can find the map that we have with the list of trackers. Their experience is color-coded by the pins that they are pinned with on the map. Even if it's a young, inexperienced tracker in training that we have listed, they're going to call one of us older guys, that's been doing it a while and say, hey, this is what this guy's got going on, what do you think? And we're going to try and help you recover that deer. So just by all means, reach out. Information's free by all means.
What about, is there somewhere for them to go if they're not Iowa people? I mean, because we could tell everybody too, but if we talk to everybody on the podcast. So is there, if they go to the American, or what was the American national one?
The American Blood Tracker Association is putting together, they're working on a nationwide map to be able to show their vetted trackers, certified trackers.
So they can find somebody close to their area.
Right, and then there's also the United Blood Trackers. You can get on the United Blood Trackers website, put in your zip code, and it'll list out trackers within your area and show whether they're UBT certified or not as well. So, and it's a great way to be able to find a tracker somewhere close to you. But being an Iowa Association, we absolutely want to advocate for our own map and put that out there. But yeah, there are nationwide.
I'm just referring so you guys don't get inundated. Or like if we end up, people are like, oh sweet, and want to start calling. Well, you guys aren't gonna be able to do much. They're just gonna be on the phone when they're in Pennsylvania or something.
Hey, season opens up, that phone rings almost nonstop, so it's not a big deal.
So the other thing we're trying to really do is recruit new trackers as well. So sometimes, typically during the rut, parts of, especially northern Iowa, 40 to 60% of the calls go unanswered. And so we really, with our outreach and education, really like to recruit additional trackers. And there's, for example, many dogs, practically any dog, can track a deer. And so it's actually one of the simpler things. They go from point A to point B, but it is really quite specialized, and we encourage people to attend events, and we host some free trainings and people to get together. And so really like to recover as many deer as possible. So the goal is, again, for the hunters to reduce wounding rates, but also help trackers so we can increase recovery rates too. That's the goal.
Awesome.
I like it.
Good deal.
All right. Well, I'll have probably quite a bit of information. We might get links and stuff from you guys. If you can, send it to us, and we'll put that in the description here. And then if you can help, we'll get any of the slides and stuff on if you guys are watching. So.
Yeah, and if you guys have questions, shoot them to us. We'll get you in touch with the Iowa Blood Trackers guys, or we'll have the link in there so you can reach out to them yourselves. Because like I said at the beginning, just because you don't own a dog doesn't mean that you don't want to support this association or these guys, because they could be that insurance policy that's the cheapest insurance policy I've ever paid for, $25 a year. So
and you actually get your money out of it too.
Hopefully you don't need it. That's what I tell everyone. Dan's the insurance policy I don't want to use. Ever. So other than that, we sure appreciate you guys. We did not, I'm getting horrible at it. We did not make them come with a wacky fact, and they could have had some really good ones. But
Any off the top of your head?
I can think of where a tracker tracked a blood trail and then just come across and found a gut pile.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
someone else had
yeah,
found
So somebody found their deer?
Somebody else found their deer and hauled it off, but
Oh, man.
the
pretty common,
dog found
actually.
their
No
Yeah,
thanks.
I
I think I'd shoot somebody. I'd have a new blood trail real quick.
yeah,
No,
that
thanks.
would not go over well. But that has happened quite a bit in Montana.
Yeah, that's
you know,
jacked up.
mainly on elk on public ground. Someone get to something and then it's gone. They just took it. So, all right. So there's your wacky fact. You may get to the end of a blood trail and just see a gut pile that tells you that your dog did not get there before you did. Someone else did. So, all right, guys. Thanks for joining the Raised Hunting Podcast. We will see you next week.
Thank you.